Hi, this is Bill, and this is going to be a demonstration of the Integy setup station. It's kind of a universal setup for many different scale cars. I know the default is for 1/8 scale vehicles, but you can do 10th scale short course, 1/8 scale truggies. I've actually used this setup station for cars all the way as small as 1/18 scale, which is kind of interesting. But for this demo here, I'm just going to kind of go over the basic features of how the system, how the setup should work. One of the things that it has is optional adapters. This is a typical 10th scale axle, and then this is an adapter that there's threads inside here, 4mm threads, and they just kind of it locks on into the axle like so, and it'll press right up to the hub on the vehicle, and then you can put these the adapters on within here for standard 1/8 scale buggies. So these adapters are available in all different sizes. This is an M4 adapter. They have M3 adapters as well for the 18 scale cars and so forth. One of the trickier things that I'm going to go right with is I've got all 4 wheels already set up, everything's assembled, and there's this Castor Gauge here which kind of goes right on. Let me go ahead and take this off so that way you can kind of see how that's supposed to work. The idea is that there is a special lip on the Castor Gauge, so when this goes on the wheel, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a recessed lip on this one edge, so you want the lip to face towards the bearing on the unit, and then your lock nut will just go ahead and go right over that bearing until it goes flush. And the idea there is you kind of have to eyeball it. You want to line the arrow up with the kingpin. You want to look underneath the car and see where the kingpin's resting or where the bolt is on the kingpin. In this particular buggy, there's a screw on the top and a screw on the bottom, and you want that arrow to point to the center of where the screw comes into the hub. And then when you see that there, you'll read your measurement there. And then for this setup right now, I'm showing about 20 degrees of caster. That caster will change if you change the ride height. So if you lower the rear of the car, the front of the buggy comes up more, then you're going to add more caster to the car. If you raise the rear and lower the front, then the caster angle will change as well. So keep that in mind with your tuning setup. So there's lots of different ways to measure all the different angles and variances there. Another thing that I like to do, well, let me go ahead and show this. This is the toe gauge here. The kit comes with 2 different sizes, a small and a large. And the larger one is for the truggies, and the smaller one is for the 1/8 buggies. What I've actually have done is I've took a paint stick, mixing stick, and I drilled some holes that are a little smaller, and I made my own custom gauge, so that way I can use this for my my 1/10 scale buggies. So that way I can use that as well, and that's coming pretty handy. I haven't actually made one for my 1/18 cars yet, but I may get around to that at some point. But the idea here is that this gauge sets up. Let me try to go ahead and move the car this way for you. And the idea is that oops, lost my balance here. Unfortunately, my setup board is kind of tight. And the idea is what I'll do is I'll turn on my my radio system. Obviously the motor will be, you don't want to engage the motor, and the idea is that I'll have my radio centered out as perfectly centered on 0, and then once I have the radio system on, I'll try to get the car as centered, as straight as I can. Then I'll install the servo arm, and then after I install the servo arm on there with the radio on, I'll try to get my reading here, and I'll adjust the gauge. Let me go ahead and put it in place. And there's a center mark at 0, so I'll slide it all the way to one side, which is marked at 0 right here. And then once I've got that centered to 0, then I'll slide the gauge to the other side and make sure that's 0 on that side. So I'll adjust the turnbuckles, and until I get my perfectly center at 0 and 0 on both sides, so that way I have 0 toe on either side, or if I want a little toe out, I can go ahead and adjust accordingly. Once I've got that centered, or if that's not working, then I'll adjust the turnbuckle on the steering arm itself to go left or right, so that way that balances out as well. So there's 3 different turnbuckle adjustments that you can make to get your toe set the way you want for the front. That's how I use that. The next thing that this comes in handy for is the camber, and the idea there is there's a camber gauge on the front, and then you kind of want the gauge reading to be on the left side or the outside of the 0, because the idea is on the outside you want a little bit of negative camber is where it comes in, and so then you get your negative camber adjustment. I think on this one I've got right around -2 degrees on either side in the front and rear, and then basically you just do the same thing. You measure your camber, and that's really all there is to it. So if you have any other questions about how this is set up, or if you need to see some close-up photos of anything, go ahead and message me on this video, and I'll try to get you some links to some additional close-ups or help address any other questions you have from there. But anyway, thanks for watching.